Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry Live. I have some super exciting news that is going to save you perhaps a ton of time if you are like me and writing report cards right about now. So stay tuned to the end when I can share what that big and exciting news is. So I'm sure you're probably with me when you say that report card writing time is probably one of the most dreaded parts of your time as a teacher because how time consuming it is. So tonight I'm hoping that I can share some time saving tips so that you're not just consumed and not see your family and have no life outside of writing report cards and just become a complete and total stress pot. Because although we all sometimes get there are definitely shortcuts and ways and organizational tips and tricks that you can implement that I know I use to help me keep a little bit sane so I can actually still see my kids and not go crazy and drink a whole ton of wine. Because sometimes wine is just tasty at the beginning of June when you're writing your report cards. So I want to start today talking about organization. So how do I organize my life, especially because I'm using inquiries? So I don't just have a whole bunch of test results that I can simply just find final marks from. So I really have to look at how I am going to gather in the information so that I can write those report cards. So some of the organizational things I do. So first off is I gather all of my information. So that means that I'm not really sending, say, notebooks and books home with my students. I like to keep them so that I can refresh my memory and look over them all kind of the week before I think about starting to write report cards. I definitely want to keep those with me. So I just find a place that I can store them and I can quickly look. Now, ideally, I would mark these all and have all of this recorded right after we've learned it. But in reality, that's not always happening. Plus, I really do like to reflect and review those notebooks as I'm just about to write the report cards. I like having that in front of me, especially if there's any questions and I need some evidence. It's handy to have if anyone questions those marks. So you have something tangible that you can pinpoint. So I definitely like to have all of my notebooks. I do use a refresh notebook every subject I teach. So for science and social studies, I will change up the notebook. So I'll pull out the papers if I'm using a duotang or give them a fresh notebook every time I change over the subjects so that I can keep that separate so that I can kind of have that as a unit by unit stuff. And it prevents some things from getting lost as you've moved on to other units. So that is definitely the first thing I do. The second thing I definitely do is to keep myself organized is if you saw my Instagram stories today, I actually posted a photo of my product tracker. So not my product tracker, sorry, my grade tracker. So what I do is I get a 11 by 17 page and I actually print out two just 8.5 by 11 papers, and it has down one column all of my students' names, and then it has just one column for each of the learning skills that I have to report on, and then the 4 strands of language, followed by the 5 strands of math, 2 strands of science, 1 strand of social studies, arts, drama, music, phys ed, or whatever else I'm teaching. So I have that, and I have it printed so that all of that fits on 2 8.5 by 11 pages. And then I use the magic of the photocopier, and I photocopy those so that they all actually sit on one 11 by 17 paper. So it looks like a booklet, and I have all of that there for each one, for the entire class. So if you think about it, I have all of my marks that I'm going to be inputting into the report card program. I have that all in a one quick glance page, and I blow it up on 11 by 17. So I actually have enough room to put my marks in. I find that really handy because when I do that, I can quickly see what my marks are going to be. And I find that a lot easier for my brain to wrap my head around where everyone's marks are for the whole class instead of the multitude of pages that I have in the report card software. I find with the report card software, there's so many input options that I'm constantly flipping back and forth between screens and pages. And so I don't lose track. If I have that paper, one glance paper copy, then I find that a lot easier. And it doesn't take very much time to make. I actually make it in Keynote. You can make it in PowerPoint. I don't make it in Word because I don't prefer Word. It's really for a processing. So anything visual like tables and borders, I actually throw in PowerPoint or Keynote. And I just set up tables and borders and structure it just the way that I had outlined for you. And I think I had that done in about 10, 20 minutes. If you need, I can post that for you, just a link to that so that you can have that just as soon as I take my own students' names out of there. Another thing I do to keep myself organized to prep for writing report cards is that I write my comment bank out completely before I actually input anything into the report card. Now, I do have some previous comments, so I do make a new folder in the comment bank and put that in there. Unfortunately, though, this is our last year with the software. So the software that we're using is MX Web. And I know we're moving to something else in the fall within my school board. So I have to export my comments out of there, and I need to put them into some other format. So I'm moving all of my comment bank into a Google Sheet so that I have all of my comments across the 4 levels for the entire year in a Google Sheet so that I can quickly just copy and paste and change it up if I need to. And I have that comment bank ready to go. I also, because I'm doing it all web-based, I can employ the helpful, handy tip of using a free software called Grammarly, Grammarly. It is free. And if you have that installed in your Chrome browser, if you use Chrome to use the internet, which I do recommend, I just like that one better than the other ones, you can put an extension on your browser and it will actually spell check and grammar check everything that you're writing. And it does work inside that comment bank. And it's a good idea to employ that, a better spell check and grammar check, because it does reduce the amount of edits you will have to do later on. And trust me, that is definitely something that I need in my life, is something to help me check my brain melting spelling and grammar as I'm writing. Because after, hour 3 of writing a report card, I literally think our brain starts melting. So any extra help that is handy is a good one. So I just wanted to pause for a second and just thank everybody for joining me. I see that I have a lot of familiar faces. Hello to Channa and Stacy and to Jen. Thanks for joining us. Nikki, it's nice to see you. And I don't know if I see everybody else that's in there, but if you're in here, please put a wave or a hi and just introduce yourself. I love to know who all is in here. And sometimes I can't always see who is in unless you put a like or heart on the video. So if you're here and watching this video, please say hello so that I can give you a quick shout out and welcome you to the show. So finally, my last organizational tip for getting prepared to write the report cards is that I also print out, once the report cards are actually done, and I do print them out, and I old school go through them and read through them. For some reason, I find that with all that paper, I just find that easier. So that's kind of a back end organizational tip, but that is definitely one that I use. I'm loving all the hellos. Leah, hello. Christy, thanks for joining. I'm so excited you guys are here. And moving on, tips for learning skills. So full confession, I get zero affiliate recognition. I'm not associated with this company whatsoever, but I'll tell you this story. A few years ago, when I was pregnant with my youngest, I had 36 students in my class in a split. It was a crazy, crazy year. I'm not even sure how I got through that all. If I'm completely honest with you, I don't know how I got through that year, but I had to write report cards. So I had to write those report cards, and I desperately needed to save myself some time, because it is no joke writing 36 report card learning skills comments is insane and takes you a crazy amount of time. So I needed to find something that was going to cut my time in half and give me my sanity back. And that is when somebody mentioned the website Student Evaluator. And I think it cost me $24 at the time. And with that $24, I could enter in my assessment of students' learning skills in a rubric, and it would generate a comment for me, as well as tell me what those levels were. And they would also give me a printable format that I could send home to parents as well. Now, since I've been off, I did just recently renew my subscription to Student Evaluator, and I have to say they've drastically improved their comment banks. They've added way more comments inside their comment, and they've made it a bit more user-friendly for how we would actually apply it into the report card. It was a tad bit clunky at the beginning as they were growing, but they have improved it and it's gotten much better. And I use this to help me write my learning skills. Now, that doesn't mean that they're completely canned responses. I find actually the ones I write myself are canned responses, because by learning skill number 10 or 15, they're all starting to sound the same anyways. And because I teach the same kids for most often 2 years in a row, I need some way to make sure that my report card learning skills over the 3 different report cards. So sometimes I'm writing 6 different reports for the same child. I need to make sure that my comments are different sounding for each one. I can't just say the same thing in the same way over and over again. And Student Evaluator definitely helps me with that. And I like that it gives me a framework to write. And it normally was taking me 15 to 20 hours to write a learning skills for my large class. Student Evaluator cut that down to 6 hours. It's still a lot of time, but it's only a fraction of the time it would have originally taken me. So if learning skills are not something that you thoroughly enjoy doing, for some people, they love writing learning skills. If learning skills is not something you thoroughly enjoy doing, there is zero shame in using a template to help you structure that comment. And you do have full control over editing that. So I would highly recommend saving yourself some time and going there. And again, I have no affiliation with this company. I just use it myself and feel as though if it's going to save me time, if you haven't heard about it or weren't sure about it, it will save you time too, and you should check it out. Now, one of the questions I get the most is, how do you evaluate inquiry? And because we're writing report cards, that is the evaluation, right? We're finally evaluating and assigning a mark to something they've done, and it's not as concrete as, say, a test, because they're doing projects, and it's based on the 3 areas of looking at your observations, your conversations, and your products. Now, if I'm being honest, I actually get a lot more data collected from using inquiry in my classroom. However, I also need to remember that I have to somehow put that together to come up with a mark. So some of the ways that I do that is I use various tracking pages throughout the learning, different ways that I can structure a class list, conference forms, and such that I can use that will help me track student learning throughout the learning, so that I have those data pages that we're all really familiar with. I also have captured that in a dossier. I can take pictures of those forms or just make quick check comments in there. And what I look for during an inquiry unit is I'm looking for contributions to our knowledge building circles, their actual products that they're creating, their work, their models, their experiments, their reflections. I'm looking at the show what you knows or the brain dump. Sometimes I'll give students an opportunity to just tell me anything that they know that they don't think I've asked them already, as well as student teacher conferences give me a entirely different type of assessment because it is a bit more relaxed for students. It's not as high stakes for many of them. And I do get a different variety of assessment when I'm conferencing with students as opposed to just tests. I will get information, my observations and conversations through guided instruction, as well as I still use tests and quizzes and exit cards and all of those things too. I'm just not only using those. And I'm making sure that if I do have a test, they are well rounded out between the 4 levels of the achievement chart and that they accurately reflect what we are supposed to test. So I'm actually going to have a Facebook Live later on in June talking about how I structure my tests, especially math tests, to make sure that all 4 levels of the achievement chart are accurately represented on that test and the process that I go through to generate one of those tests. So there's lots of different ways that I can get assessment information. So how does that turn into the evaluation and the mark on the report card? Well, I actually take all of my data and then I end up sorting it into what the look for. So I look at the overall expectations from the curriculum and say, okay, what look fors and does this target? So is it overall expectation 1, 2, or 3? I'm not looking at the specific expectations because we do evaluate on overall. We teach the specific and evaluate on the overall. And I try to look at those and how they are balanced between the 4 levels of the achievement chart to make sure that the different learning tasks showed knowledge and understanding, thinking, communication, and application. So I make sure that I have a variety of assessment data for all 4 levels of the achievement chart under all 3 of the overall expectations. Once I have that, it's time for me to begin to generate a report card comment. So the structure of my report card comment, now this is going to be different depending on the whims of your principal, the goals of your school board. I think every school board and district does these things just a tad bit differently. So you really have to think about what is the person who's going to send it back to you? What ultimately are they looking for? And you have to kind of tweak what I'm going to be saying in the next couple of seconds, tweak that to make it fit what that administrator is looking for, because really all of them are slightly different. So first, I embed the expectation, the overall expectation, in a student and parent friendly as possible. And I include a personal example directly from our learning tasks when possible. So for instance, one of the report card comments that I would have written for Pulleys and Gears is, in science, Naim learned all about pulleys and gears. He was able to competently evaluate how real-world uses of pulleys and gears impact society as a whole. Through various experiments, research projects, and his final inquiry project, Naim demonstrated a solid understanding of how pulleys and gears modify speed, direction, and force. In his final project, he built blank. Through the activity, he competently applied his knowledge of the basic principles and functions of pulley and gear systems. So that is an example of what I would write, where I'm using the information from the overall expectation, embedding that with a personal example. I do use qualifiers in there primarily because I think it gives parents and students a good litmus for where they are on that grading scale. And I'm going to use them until I'm told I'm not allowed to use them anymore. And when I do write a next step, I try to think of the most important next step that they could do with their parents to help them get better at this learning skill. So I'm not necessarily doing a next step for every single expectation that I was teaching. I try to make them a bit more general. And I also try to look at what that student really is struggling with and what I tell them in person in a conference. And I try to put it in as student parent friendly language as possible. But if we're completely honest, that's not always possible. It's not always possible at all. So my comment bank actually looks like, let's see if I can share my desktop screen here. So this is how I've been exporting my comment bank. So this is actually for a full year. So I've got my addition and subtraction, which is in term 1, multiplication and division, which I will be using for term 2. And I work through all of the different expectations. I do break it apart in terms of like patterning and algebra, although it's one unit. I'll normally do patterning one term, algebra the next term, but I have them all written here. I also have listening and speaking for oral communication. And I'm just making this in a Google sheet and putting level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and simply just marking that where the level 3 is. That's generally the comment I write first, and then copying it into the level 2 and level 4, changing the qualifiers and some of the words in there to make it more appropriate for those levels, and then looking at the level 1. This is essentially my entire grade 4 year of science, language, math, and social studies. So all of the main subjects that I teach. I don't have art in there, and I don't have drama yet. I have not exported them. And I did promise for you that there would be some exciting news. So my exciting news is actually that because I had to make them and export them anyways, I have put up these report card comment banks in my TPT store. So you can share with you what that looks like here. Now, they are the pre-sale, so they're not exactly finished, but I wanted to make sure that they were live and ready to go for you now. So they are 50% off right now in my store. And again, it's the entire year's bundle. So if you don't have a comment bank built up for grade 4, you just want to see something different that matches some of my science, social studies, language, and math products that you may or may not own already, you can check that out. I have them listed right now for $3 in my store. So I'll show you. Now they're very basic because again, I literally did this put it up in my store at 9 o'clock, which is why I didn't start until 9:10 tonight. There it is. So you'll see it doesn't even have a title. And the page is literally just a link to the Google comment or to the Google form, and you will be prompted to get a copy of that. So you won't be prompted to see the one that I'm currently working on, but you will see a copy of it. And when it's completely updated in 48 hours, because listen, I have to export my comments anyways, so I might as well share them with you. I have to put them into a form because I need them for my own access. So I might as well share them with you through my TPT store. So you can get those right now. And you can check them out. They're there. The grade 4 one has comments in every section. The grade 5 one is about halfway done. So it will be updated as I work on it tonight. And then I will have it polished. So when you notice that there is finally a cover in my TPT store on that product, that means it's updated and live, and the price will go up in 48 hours on that product once it is completely finished. And normally I wouldn't post it this early because it's not quite done, but I definitely wanted to make sure that it was available to all of you tonight after we talked about this. So you can link over to that. It is in my TPT store. It is titled Ontario Grade 5 Report Card Bank or Ontario Grade 4 Report Card Bank. It doesn't look very fancy. It looks pretty simple, but that is because it is literally the pre-sale. I don't have it. It's not completely done. You're getting it early at 50% off right now, and it's there. So I'll show you again what that looks like. There is the grade 5. Is it grade 5 or grade 4? I think that's grade 4. It is the grade 4 one here. Let's see if I'll zoom that in so that you can. So you have all of the comments, level 1, 2, for reading, including responding to reading, reading DRA comment, a reading, analyzing text comment, listening and speaking, and all of the math strands as well. So that is there for you if, again, you want to save a bit more time and not have to write all of those comments yourself. You have full editing access to that file. So how it works is when you download the page that I attach to that product, you will get a link, and that link will have you click, and it will prompt you to make a copy of the report card comment file. For the next 48 hours, they're not going to be fully complete. So wait until you see that there's a cover, and I will let you know on my Facebook page as well as my insiders group, and those are finally updated so that you can get the actual real life version of it, which is fully complete, ready for you to use. But in the meantime, you can use what's there. It will prompt you to make a copy, so you will have your own version of it, which means because it's in Google Sheets, it is completely editable by you. So if there's one or two comments that you want to change and modify to suit your own needs, that's totally available. So this is an editable copy, full year report card comment bank for grade 4 and grade 5. And there will be a bundle of that with the grade 4 and grade 5. So I thought that was some pretty exciting news, because I know I wish somebody had just downloaded their report card comment bank for me, because that stuff takes a lot of time. So that's all we have for tonight. Remember, June is assessment month on Teaching with Inquiry Live. So we've got a few different topics coming up, including making your tests balanced, the different kind of checklists and sheets that I use to actually track my assessment that you can have. And I have a download for you for that as well. That's coming up next week, followed by the tests. And there will be more assessment and evaluation coming up all month of June. So stay tuned for that and join me for those shows every Monday night on my Facebook page at Madly Learning. And if you want to access the show notes or blog post or live podcast replay for this show so that you can listen to it on the go, if you want to access all of those show links, you can get that at www.teachingwithinquiry.com. That is the website for this show's page, where you can see this links to all of this stuff that's associated with tonight's show, as well as all previous shows, so that you can go back in history and watch it as well. And again, I have a little visitor. Hello. So that's all I have for tonight, and I will catch you next week at 9 p.m. Bye for now.